years. It's 2020. My name is Dory. I'm a former member of the World Mission Society Church of God from 2010 to 2019. I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada. I want to share my experience and my own personal opinions of my 9 years there. First, I want to say I'm not here to get anyone out of the World Mission Society Church of God against their will. If you're happy and you feel fulfilled, you should stop watching this video now. Go and watch the latest cat video. Seriously, if you're content and satisfied on your journey with the World Mission Society Church of God, and your life has meaning thanks to the church, you should not be watching this. When I was in the World Mission Society Church of God, God the Mother told her children not to watch videos like this one because it was like eating from the forbidden fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. However, if you're not happy, have doubts inside of you, and if you have questions the church cannot answer or are discouraged from asking, then only then this video is for you. I'll wait. Still with me? I was just like you. I felt lonely, even surrounded by dozens of church members, and very often felt ostracized by my fellow brothers and sisters. Does it sound familiar? Again, this video is for you. Yes, you. The one that has continued to watch this video because the good children of Mother have left already. By you continuing to watch this video, you have entered a silent mutual agreement with me that you have agreed that you are not happy in your current situation with the World Mission Society Church of God, and you are curious on how I got out. Now, grab a napkin because we are about to snack on the forbidden fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And it's very juicy. Well, this is my 9-year story with the World Mission Society Church of God. How I got in, why I decided to get involved, and how I lived when I was part of them. The actions I bear witness, my silent struggles, and how and why I left the World Mission Society Church of God. I will be brutal honest with you. This was a hard journey. Mistakes were made, but I do not regret any of them. As someone wiser than me once said, good judgment comes from experience. And experience? Well, that comes from poor judgment. I hope my experience can resonate with people going through similar experiences, perhaps just like you. So let's begin. The year was 2010. It all started with the phone call from my biological sister, a phone call that will set in motion a chain of events and leave a lasting impact in my life. I don't want to sound cliche, but that phone call literally changed my life. Dory, I just found God's true church. You have to come as soon as possible and do a Bible study. Sister, please be careful. You might have just found yourself in a cult. I was just kidding at the time because she sounded so overwhelmed with joy. That was scary, especially knowing my sister. No, it's not a cult. The Church of God shows you the Bible like no other church. I'm not interested. Just do one Bible study. You don't have to join. To be supportive towards my sister, I willingly decided to partake in a Bible study. So a few days later, here we are at my parents' dining table. When I started studying with the Church of God, I knew very little about the Bible. I'll be honest. I had not read the whole Bible cover to cover and still consider myself religious. I was 20 years old. I was impressionable at that age. Bear in mind, as recent as today, the Church of God still prefers preaching grounds at malls, universities, and college campuses. And we all know that those are the playground for the open-minded and naive. Yeah, I thought I knew it all at that age. Come on, didn't you also feel that same way at that age? So when this church comes and promises me to give me all the answers to life, directly taken from the Bible, I was listening. And that kind of knowledge can make an impact on a young individual with lack of wisdom, like me back then. I was very curious about the Bible study. I grabbed a Bible from my mom's bookshelf. The lady that came, later she became the deaconess, who was to do the Bible study with me, told me that that Bible was not the correct version required for our Bible study. She said we could do a Bible study with the King James Version or the New International Version. The NIV is the primary Bible the World Mission Society Church of God uses. The recruiters have been trained rigorously on how to show and tell. Well, there I was on my first Bible study, but the lady, the future deaconess, told me that if I want to know more, we had to do yet another Bible study in another occasion, and many more after that. I was very curious about that church. I had more questions. She explained it like this. Imagine the truth is like light, but your entire life you have been wandering in complete darkness. If I were to give you all the answers now, it will blind you and confuse you. I have to start lighting candles one at a time and progressively turn on all the lights little by little. And then over time, you will get used to the light of the sun without getting blind or disoriented. It sounded very beautiful to me. I like it. However, I did not know at that time, but this was a big red flag. A trait of a cult is that they will not give you all the facts up front in order not to scare potential new recruits. And they retain a big deal of information from the minds of new recruits and low-ranking members. That is flat-out deceiving behavior. They can use any allegory they want, but it does not change the fact that they are hiding the truth from you. So their premise of the World Mission Society Church of God is that the Bible holds all the answers. They have a special way to read the Bible, hence the Bible study. How do they know how to read the secret message from the Bible? Answer: based on the claim that World Mission Society Church of God says that Second Coming Christ unsung home is the only one able to interpret the Bible correctly by unsealing and revealing the mysteries of the Bible. The way the Bible is interpreted requires a lot of Bible flipping. So they grab one Bible verse. So for example, they take you to Matthew 24:30, which says that Second Coming Christ will come in the clouds. Then they take you to Hebrews 12:1, which says that the clouds means flesh. Then they take you to Matthew 24:27, which says that he will come from the east. Then they take you to Revelation 7:2, says that he will come from the east. And they ask you, where was this written? And they answer, it was written in the island of Patmos. And if you take a straight line east of the island of Patmos, it takes you to Busan, South Korea. Then they also show you Matthew 24:32, which is the lesson of the fig tree. They said that the fig tree is Israel, so whenever it becomes a nation, it became a nation in 1948, that's when Second Coming Christ will come. And so they also mentioned that he will come in King David's throne. So they take you to 2 Samuel 5:4, and David was 30 years old when he became king. He reigned for 40 years. They say that Jesus was baptized at the age of 30. He served for 3 years, and he still had 37 years left. Ansang Hong was 30 when he got baptized in 1948. He preached for the remaining 37 years, and he died in 1985. I was told that he died taking a train to China to go preach in China. And as for God the Mother, they take you to Revelation 22:17. It says the Spirit and the bride. So they're like, who's the bride? So they take you to Revelation 21:9-10. And it says the bride is Jerusalem and that she will be coming down out of heaven. Then they take you to Galatians 4:26, which is, but the Jerusalem that is above is free, and she is our mother. And then they take you to Genesis 1:26-27, which shows how many images God has. It says male and female, and then they tell you that God, the original word, was in Hebrew, Elohim, which is plural for God, is gods. So there's two gods, that's what they say. So the thing is, they cherry pick the Bible to fit their narrative. The best way I can simplify their technique is like this. Remember those magic shows on TV where they grab an unsuspected person on the street and then pull a magical illusion right in front of their eyes? Vanish cards, coins, whatever they might be holding right in front of them, and boom, the unsuspected participant is now perplexed. Same thing here. It's all one elaborate illusion. Just in this case, they use their Bibles to wow the unsuspected, now believers. See, it's all in the Bible. The truth is in the Bible. We use the Bible. So World Mission Society Church of God is the truth. When I asked, they answered my one question I had since I could remember, which was, what is the purpose of life? The World Mission Society Church of God answered that in yet another Bible study by telling me that we all sinned in heaven and were cast down to this earth. That we're all angels on death row, and we can be forgiven of the sin if we come to God the Mother. By those who don't know, it's a 76-year-old Korean, and are baptized in the name of Christ on Sung Hong. They showed me this in Revelations 22:17. The Spirit and the bride say, come, and let the one who hears say, come. Let the one who is thirsty come, and let the one who wishes take the free gift of the water of life. So, remember that word free, because it's going to come and haunt us later on. Again, via Bible flipping for over 2 hours, then they proceed to explain to me that we were all cast out of heaven for the heinous crime of attempting to kill the gods. After this powerful knowledge was unloaded onto me, I could not help but ask, what have we done? And the worst part was I was unable to remember what grievous sin I committed in heaven. But they claim my soul did it. In heaven, we all did it. That I did it. That you did it. Now, I have to beg for forgiveness for a crime I have no memory of. Now, not even here on earth were that crew of trying to execute someone that cannot remember his or her crimes. The guilt I was given was the beginning of many years of anxiety. Congratulations! Welcome to the World Mission Society Church of God. Here's your complimentary anxiety, and don't forget to smile. A trait of a cult is that they create a problem and then sell you the solution. So there I was, 20 years old. I was given the burden of knowledge that gave me fear and guilt, something I didn't have before. Now I know the problem. What is the solution? Salvation, they said. The next thing for my salvation was to get baptized. There I was in the Bible study, being revealed the many mysteries of the Bible, the hidden truth. The only thing keeping me away from salvation of my soul is baptism in the name of Christ on Sung Hong. The greatest event of my life, according to the church. So this once in a lifetime event, the beginning of my soul salvation, the start of a new chapter in my life, my baptism. Where will it take place, you might ask? In the bathtub located in the second floor of this house. I baptize this daughter in the name of God the Father Jehovah, God the Son Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, Christ on Zoom. My hair was still wet from the baptism, my heart full of joy. When the chain of commandment was introduced to me, I meet my deaconess, who I should not name for respect of her privacy. I address her as sister, and I am immediately corrected to address her as deaconess. It was before third day service, which is on Tuesday. Deaconess gave me 2 papers, Prayer of Our Wishes, which is a Korean prayer that all services end in, and Mother's Teachings. I remember my sisters telling me that they have received the third paper, which is the calendar feast. But I was not given this paper at that moment. Deaconess got distracted with deaconess duties, so I thought, I would just ask for it the next chance I get. A few days later, it was the Sabbath Saturday. All of us women, we were in one of the rooms studying. Deaconess comes in and tells us to pull out our feast calendars because she needs to explain the prayer services. So I tell her, can I please have a copy of a feast calendar because I never got one? She gives me a sharp stare, followed by a, "Don't lie! Just ask me for another copy of the feast calendar because you lost the one I gave you! You don't have to lie!" Guys, I know for sure I never got that calendar. It was missing when the other papers were given to me. I got the message right away. She wanted to assert her position of power, which was very clear. Now that you're in the Church of God, you have to preach to as many people as humanly possible and bring them to the truth. So we must look pretty. We are instructed to wear heels and skirts. I don't like heels because they are bad for my back, knees, and bunions start to result from wearing heels for too long. So I rebelled and didn't wear them. One of the sisters went and bought me heels that advertised to be the most comfortable heels in order to encourage me to wear them. I was told Mother Jerusalem would preach in heels. What do heels have to do with salvation? Speaking of heels, as an eager new member, I was encouraged to preach, and they said, go out and recruit as many souls as possible. They incentivize us by giving us tips and guides on how to approach people at college campuses and universities. However, we were instructed to introduce ourselves as we were from the Elohim Academy and not from the World Mission Society Church of God, to make it seem like we were part of the university and don't draw too much attention on us and gain the trust of students walking on campus slightly easier. Now, picture a couple of young ladies well-dressed wearing heels asking random students to join their Bible study. And it worked. I wonder why. So now I'm being told that for my free gift of salvation of my soul, I have to work for it. Not so free, huh? So what are these activities I must engage in order to retain the right of salvation according to the church, including but not excluding any of the following? I have to keep all the feasts and 5 a.m. and 8 p.m. prayer services, Passover bread and wine, Sabbath, third day Tuesdays, all 10 commandments of the Bible, all 13 teachings of God the Mother, tithe, and many, many offerings. Do not look up the World Mission Society Church of God on the internet. Preach and save as many souls as possible. Keep daily prayer times at 5 a.m., 9 a.m., 3 p.m. Learn all 50 sermons. Pass all Bible courses. Do not befriend the world because they're bad influence. No whistling. Do not speak against the Holy Spirit, Christ on home. Always smile while wearing those fabulous heels for the females, as uncomfortable as they might be. Do not eat meat of strangled animals. No rare meat with blood in it. Do not eat food that is being prayed over by any other name besides Christ on home. No yoga. Do not set foot in any other church, temple, synagogue, or shrines. Second Passover. Do not celebrate Thanksgiving, Christmas, Halloween, Valentine's, and Easter. No tattoos. Do not look up the World Mission Society Church of God on the internet. Well, this is where things start to get, should we say, controlling. The beginning of many successful attempts at group subjugation. Something the experts call cult behavior techniques. In order to lose the individuality in the group and assert a hierarchy, all members must act the same, aka break down of a person's sense of self. In my early years in the World Mission Society Church of God, I did my best to do my due diligence and follow the orders Deaconess gave that she said came from Mother. That included all the services, prayer times, preaching 2 times a day, every day, and don't say God bless you after someone sneezes. Now imagine how many rude stares I got when I was in public and at work. Now the next one almost cost me my job. And some of you might relate. If you were scheduled to work on a day of a feast, we were encouraged to lie and call in sick in order to keep God's feast. We were warned not to research the World Mission Society Church of God on the internet because if we did, then it would be like eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and we could die spiritually. So much for salvation. You opened the wrong link and your soul is dead for eternity because you found an article that spoke badly about the church. We were also warned to avoid whistling because it calls evil spirits. I've seen children rebuked for whistling. When watching movies, we would mute the scenes where there was whistling. The backlash of whistling was so bad, a sister one day was blowing her nose and it caused a loud whistle. She was so apologetic with the other sisters around her, telling us all it was an accident. In the beginning of my first years in Zion, we were discouraged from reading the Bible on our own because it was seen as a puzzle that only God can solve. There was a lot of Bible flipping and every verse had its pair verse. So I take off my shoes when I enter the house church. I asked the deaconess, why do we have to take off our shoes when we enter this house church? Is it like when Moses approached the burning bush and God instructed him to remove his sandals because he was standing on holy ground? She replies, no, it's because it keeps the house clean. On Sabbath, we were required to be in church all day. The deaconess warned us not to step outside the house church during the Sabbath. We were to remain inside the church in fear if Father were to come at any moment and not find us inside. Father? Yes, Aunt Sahon, who died back in 1985. Another dose of anxiety. So one day, Deaconess was cutting onions, and we were all crying from the attention she sent. I was like, my eyes, I can't take it anymore. His sister and I couldn't handle the strong smells of the onions, so we stepped outside and began to talk about how blessed we were to find the truth. After a brief moment outside, Deaconess comes out begging us to please come inside. Her expression on her face was that she was really concerned and worried for our spiritual safety being outside of Zion. We told her we were fine. We just needed a break from the onion fumes. She continued to plead with us to go back inside. So we finally gave in and went inside. Did I mention how my deaconess was very manipulative? So I'm an ambivert, which is a mixture of extrovert and introvert. There are moments I enjoy spending time socializing with people, but sometimes I need to recharge and be by myself. One Sabbath day, I kept the morning service and the afternoon service. And in between services, we have to do Bible studies in our groups. That day, I just needed some alone time. So after service, I sneak out when no one was looking. I get into my car, started the engine, put it in drive. I look outside and Deaconess is running after me. I step on the gas. My heart is pounding because Deaconess caught me driving off. I look in the rear view mirror and she's running after me. And she looks sad. Wow, thanks for the guilt trip. I go to the nearest theaters at the Cannery to watch the new movie, Megamind. I'm a kid at heart, so I really enjoy animated movies. After the movie, I come back to Zion in time for the next service. I take off my shoes, walk into the room where my group was watching a church video from Korea. I sit down. Deaconess walks in. My heart is pounding, and I am thinking, here we go. I told you I joined for my salvation of my soul, not an endless trip of guilt and anxiety. She says, come here, I need to talk to you. So I follow her into one of the rooms. I have a brave face, but inwardly, I'm dying of fright. Deaconess has rebuked me for much smaller things than this. So I wonder what she'll do now. We walk into one of the rooms alone. She closes the door behind her. I feel like I'm gonna faint, but I do my best to hide this terror. She gives me a hug and starts crying. She tells me, I'm sorry if I have been too hard on you. I really want you to be saved. So I'm thinking she's apologizing. Maybe she's going to start being nicer to me from now on. So I tell her, it's okay. I just really need a break from the church. You know, sometimes I need some alone time to recharge and reflect. So she tells me, I will ask the pastor for permission for you to be able to walk around the neighborhood. Permission? I thought this was America. Pastor granted the permission for me to be allowed to go outside in between services. After that, I was seen as someone with lesser faith, therefore treated differently. Black sheep. a label that will haunt me for many years. Another cult technique used to suppress negative behavior on a member, they perform something called individual alienation, the state or experience of being isolated from a group or an activity to which one should belong or in which one should be involved, also known as being ostracized. How the church began showing a lack of love towards me without being blunt about it, you might ask? By being passive-aggressive towards me, of course. For example, there were World Mission Society Church of God books I was denied from buying. I wonder why. And group leadership positions were out of the question for me. During group meetings, all other sisters could lead in prayer except me. I was in the waiting list to go see God the Mother in South Korea, even saved up money. Other members who came after me who were seen as having greater faith were bumped up the list, and I kept getting bumped down the list. During that time, I would go preaching almost daily, AM and PM, while wearing those uncomfortable shoes because women have to look good while representing the church, I guess. I was still seen as a bad tree because I couldn't bear any good fruits, meaning recruit more members who would recruit more members. One of the Bible courses even require us to bear at least one fruit in order to pass. If not, then it required retaking the whole course again. Now, for a religion, they preach love thy brother and thy sister. Whatever happened to 1 John 4:21? I must have missed that Bible study. Did they nullify that? Love not thy brother, not until they bear fruit? Speaking of love thy brother and thy sister, during that time we were discouraged to preach to the homeless because the church said they will only come to eat our food. And if they cannot take care of their physical life, how are they going to be able to take care of their spiritual life? And don't forget, tithe and offerings, it was a big deal. And I guess if you're homeless, that's something difficult for you to do if you want your free salvation. Another instance that had me baffled in regards to the whole let's save as many souls as possible was around 2011. We were preaching at some apartments and it was time for us to go, but Deaconess was still preaching to someone. So we all waited at a distance for her to finish because we didn't want to overcrowd outside the person's door. And besides, she was the best. She was the pro at preaching door to door and the best of the best in our church. When Deaconess stopped talking to that individual, she approached us and in disgust was like, ew, she's a lesbian, and started rubbing my arm as in to rub off whatever cootie she got because apparently the lady she was talking to accidentally touched her. So I asked Deaconess, can you really become gay just by touching someone gay? I was a believer in whatever World Mission Society Church of God told me about the spiritual world. I was very gullible to the point that they no longer needed to show me a Bible verses. So Deaconess, in a rebuking manner, like I should know this answer by now, tells me, Dory, that's why we have third day service. So we can cleanse ourselves of this world. I had more questions, but I was too afraid to ask. I didn't want to be rebuked for questions I should know, but didn't. As a member, one tries to please the church overseer because if not, then you're looked down upon as having lesser faith. If the overseer is pleased with the member, then the member gets praise. At this time, I wasn't allowed to attend Bible studies with the sisters and potential new recruits who would meet at Starbucks. So I would do secret Bible studies with acquaintances I knew outside the church. Whatever it takes to bear fruit. I was growing desperate. The never-ending list of things I had to do were overwhelming. I could never measure up to it. I could feel my free salvation slipping away from my fingers. As anxiety kept escalating, remembering the end is upon us, the world might end at any day now. So in my personal experience, I bear witness how they shower the newcomers with love, praise, approval, really interested in you for the first month, which is the honeymoon period. The experts in cult behavior techniques call this love bombing. Once hooked, then reeled in, then they get to work on you. They suck you dry psychologically, mentally abuse you, and manipulate you. Then the love stops. They start demanding more of your time for church activities. The more loyal you are, the more they will exploit you for the mission of preaching to everyone. When Zion was moved to a different house located in downtown, I stopped attending services for a while. Almost a year had passed since I started attending the church. I came in once in a while thinking, it's a matter of time before deaconess kicks me out of the church of God. I'd rather just leave now by my own before that happens. Yet I continue to believe I had too much at stake just to walk out. After all, my sisters were still there and they were climbing up on the ranks of the church. Now, this is where the church made the most impact in my personal life, as the church began to pull my biological sisters away from me because I was seen as someone with lesser faith. The very sisters I have grown up with my entire life in order to accommodate the church's goals. They are my sisters, and they were also in the same church, and they become strangers to me. I know not by their own will alone, but rather the church's expectations. A wedge grew between us. Now imagine, for the church members that have family outside the church, sisters, brothers, spouses, that was tough even for me. And my sisters and I were in the same religion. I can see why so many people claim the World Mission Society Church of God tears families apart. My biological sisters were told to keep their distance from me. In 2012, I wanted to go to Disney World because my sisters and I were not given the opportunity as children. I asked my biological sisters to accompany me to live this childhood dream of ours, the three of us going to Disney. What did my sisters tell me? There's no time left. We need to save as many souls as possible before World War III. Fate had it that I ran into an old friend from high school. I told her I wanted to go to Disney for once in my life, but it was seen as selfish by my church, who wanted me to preach to as many souls as possible. So my high school friend took compassion on me, asked her job for a few days off, and I asked deaconess for permission, who asked pastor for permission. Once we both received permission, we both went to Florida for a week to enjoy Disney. When I came back, I told my deaconess I wanted to study a new skill to better myself in my career and contribute to society. My deaconess worried, there's no time for that. We need to save as many souls as possible before the nuclear bombs are dropped and the earth is destroyed by fire. Here were so many red flags. First, they were oppressing my right to study and get a career to advance my future. And second, my deaconess, the person in charge, is acting strict. They actually Christ appearing to be supportive, only to scold me one more time and flat out oppressing my future. Now, this is textbook example of emotional manipulation, another trait in the cult. And lastly, anxiety fuel is that the bombs might drop at any moment. You have to understand, this was around when the constant North Korea missile test was going on. And sadly, they were using that tactic to inject more fear into their members. The other members were nice and all, but it's kind of a herd mentality, robotic. God bless you. Let's do a Bible study. There's a lack of authenticity. Now, this is where I met my new friend inside the church. We couldn't really talk much because we were to always only be practicing the Bible studies and follow the format they gave us and to memorize Mother's teachings. The way the World Mission Society Church of God shows love to others is by preaching about Passover and the other studies. I have been there for years now, and I started to feel lonely, even with my biological sisters right next to me, but it got worse. So one day I acquired a coupon that says 2 for 1 to the National History Museum. I begged my biological sisters to please go with me. They were instructed to keep their distance from me and fear being rebuked by a deaconess if they hanged out with me. One of my sisters simply tells me, "We must preach to as many souls as possible. We cannot be focusing on this earth." My sisters drive off to the Church of God on a day that there's no services, but they are to go preaching. My dad later finds me crying in my room because I was so lonely and had not one person to go with me to the museum. He had compassion on me and tells me that he will cancel his plans for the day and accompany me to the museum on Las Vegas Boulevard. So, in a way, this was one of the lowest points in my life. The church had denied me to socialize with anyone outside Zion. My sisters won't hang out with me, and I virtually have no friends besides my friend from high school that she was entangled in her own life. I was very alone and loaded with fear and anxiety. I want to be a good member. I want to try really hard to do my best because deep inside of me, I still wanted to believe in this church. And at that time, I thought it was a true religion. I was not going to surrender that easily. But in reality, I was utterly alone. So later, the church moves to an office building by Jones and Etna, which is here. I was already going to services by now, but I tried to attend as many as possible. And when I went, I didn't feel a connection with these people anymore. The one friend I had in the Church of God and I would sneak a little conversation here and there. Attendance is always being taken. At first I thought it was strange, because why an all-knowing and all-loving God needs to be reported back on who attends and who doesn't? Members are always doing their best to attend every Sabbath on time, because then you're seen as someone with greater faith. And remember, every service we have to give our offerings. Again, with the whole work for your salvation, it almost starts to feel like a pyramid scheme. Greater faith equals gain the overseer's trust, then you're given leadership positions, you earn more spiritual blessings. The few times I manage to start a conversation, it always comes back about the church. But this one scared me on a financial level. A sister tells me how happy she is that the world is going to end and she will be able to go back to heaven. But before that, she says that she will take the opportunity and max out her credit cards, because the debt will matter once the end comes. That was back in 2013. One day, I wanted to go talk to the older women of the church. I was in the youth group at the time, but I didn't like how fake they all were. I mean, I don't mean to insult anyone now that I'm out. I know and understand that we were forced to look happy, to appear happy, even if we felt miserable from the inside. Every single one was concerned with pleasing the deaconess to avoid being rebuked. Social manipulation. In the group meetings, we read from the Elohist books. We have to pay for all the new editions to come out if we want one. Watching church videos and doing the Bible studies, it becomes very repetitive. Lots of fun. So I snuck out to be with the older women. They seem to be more genuine. While they care about keeping the overseer pleased, at the same time, they weren't as concerned like the young ladies. World Mission Society Church of God spends more time training the youth than the elderly. I started a conversation with the two ladies who were brought to the church by their friends and family. I was maybe 1 minute into the conversation before two sisters came over to separate me from them. I tell them I'm happy talking to these two ladies. I want to continue talking to them. The two sisters remind me that we are to remain in our assigned groups. My one friend I had in the World Mission Society Church of God is in my group, but I hardly get to see her because she's always assigned the kids' room, like all the time. So the sisters walk me back to my assigned group. What's that? 1940s Germany? I was 23 then. 3 years had passed since I joined the church. I stopped attending services for a while. The loneliness returned because I didn't have many friends. My sisters were always preaching every single day or doing Bible studies with the new recruits while keeping all the services. Now, this is where rock bottom at the World Mission Society Church of God was for me. Now I'm alone, not by my hand, but by the church. Yet I'm surrounded by crowds of people, fake smiling and saying, God bless you, every time I make eye contact. I'm a social creature. I seek friendships, not the synthetic supplement. How often do you feel this way since you joined the World Mission Society Church of God? The most logical thing for me to do was to go out and look for at least one good friend. But I wanted one good friend that was not part of the church. Let me tell you, finding a friend was not easy for me, as those years in the church had clouded my judgment. It made me socially awkward. Most conversations I had with people were uncomfortable at best. They would ask me, want to hang out this Saturday? Sorry, I can't. I have church services on Saturdays. What do you do for fun? I would answer, I hang out at Bible studies. What do you like? Because of my anxiety, I'm thinking, I just want my soul to be saved. But all that comes out is, I like turtles. From the outside looking in, I look like a boring person. I do not drink or go to parties, not only because the church discourages those behaviors, but simply because it wasn't me. It was a lonely time for me. Yes, I had acquaintances, but I'm talking about a friend I could go do stuff with. Because of it, I spent many days just going to the movies alone. I went to go eat by myself. I learned to slowly enjoy being alone. I learned to appreciate my own company. In a way, I was dating myself before Emma Watson coined the term. Looking back, I did a lot of inner soul searching, finding new things about myself. I was always eager to learn something new, learn a new skill, learn new languages and cultures, something besides learning that we all are going to die by fire. But the church discourages that kind of thinking because it's seen as selfish. And one must devote our time to the church, not to indulge in ourselves. For many months, my search continued. Then another event that was changed my life occurred. Almost as if fate intervened, the answer to my prayers. I would put a pin on that. I met this really funny and cute guy in a Cafe Rio on my many self-dates. He was very approachable and he made me laugh a lot, something I had not been able to do in a long time. I was shocked and flattered when he bluntly asked me to go out on a date, but nothing serious. After all, the only thing I really wanted was friendship. And I would use this opportunity to find out more about him. And sadly, I fear once he knew about the church, very likely it would not end well, like many times before. We went to see a few movies. We also went on many walks. We people watched. And all the time, I really had a good time with him. Honestly, I began to appreciate his company. As time passed and my trust began to grow, I started to vent to him a little about my life, my family, my beliefs. This is where he explained to me that he was a non-believer. For a moment, I was happy. And then he explained to me that he is an atheist. He does not believe in the Bible. He does not even believe in the existence of the soul or a God, or gods in my case. It was almost a deal breaker for me. All this time, I had been warned about people like him, what the church might call a borderline bad influence. Remember that pin? I was shocked. Oh my goodness. But one thing I did notice right away was how understanding he was about my religion. He did not try to prove my religion wrong. He was very respectful towards me and my beliefs. Another thing I noticed was he was not trying to convert me to his mindset. I like that. I like that a lot. It was almost the polar opposite of what the church told me about outsiders and non-believers. We started to go out more frequently. I remember this occasion we went to go eat at a buffet after watching a movie. I remember it clearly. The movie was Monsters University. It was him and me eating at the buffet, surrounded by people, as buffets here in Las Vegas tend to always be crowded. And all of a sudden, I began to be flooded with alien guilt to the point that I felt sad and depressed in the middle of our date. I looked at all those people. I could not stop thinking about how those poor souls would not be saved because they did not know the truth of the Passover for salvation. As our friendship grew stronger, one day he tells me he likes me. Oh my goodness. Imagine if the church were to find out. What a taboo. I wasn't sure if I liked him back. I was very spiritually conflicted, but I knew I really enjoyed his company. And I was not going to lose a good friend. I suffered the loneliness for far too long. So against all the warnings from the church, I told him, okay, I'll be your girlfriend, but only if you meet my parents and if I meet yours. Honestly, I was just trying to put it off. Maybe he will be scared to meet my parents. Most boys are anyways. They just want to play around. Within a week, he did just that. He manned up and was very mature about it. And just like that, we became a couple. A World Mission Society Church of God member and an atheist. Forbidden love. What Mexican soap operas are made of. As our love began to mature between us, I thought to myself, I will have to wed one day. I'd rather marry a non-believer who will not snitch me out to deaconess with things I do at the house. My ideal life was to come home to my house and relax, be me. We started talking about marriage. I told him, listen, I believe in this religion, and if we are to get married, I want you to know what it's about. Can you do a Bible study? I'm seriously not trying to convert you. The teachings are very different from many other religions. I just want you to be okay with me being there. And if we were to have kids, I will be taking them there. You can name our future children, but I choose the religion. So he did a Bible study. He later researched the World Mission Society Church of God and was okay with it. But he was not sold into it. Deep inside, I was a little happy he didn't convert because I didn't want to have to worry about him snitching me out to the overseers for something I may have done. So we scheduled our marriage. We had a small ceremony, just our parents, because I invited my biological sisters, but both declined. They said they would rather be preaching than attending my wedding. Ouch. So we got married. I was happy for both of us, but at the same time, I was worried about the salvation of his soul, especially because he has always been so kind and loving and compassionate towards me all this time. By this time, I'm missing many services. The church moves over by Easter. 2.5 years had passed. At this point, I was married and a proud mother of 2 babies. I had never missed any of the Passovers. I tried to attend some services, but let me tell you, being a mom in the World Mission Society Church of God, that was not easy for me. During those years, I'm being convinced to go back to services more often. I let them know I have kids. It's not easy to go to services with kids that young. I can barely walk because I'm still healing from the C-section. So they persuaded me to go back and bring my kids. They told me I cannot leave them at home with their atheist dad because they too must keep the Sabbath day holy in Zion. In order for them to receive spiritual blessings, spiritual rest, and be made more holy. Even though they won't understand what is being said. At that time, my daughters were babies. And one was 2 years old and the little one was 6 months. For me, it would be easier to just leave them at home because of the bottles, the diapers, and worst of it, tantrums. When I attend the services, they show us beautiful buildings in Korea of the churches of God there. Meanwhile, in our Zion, we had one men's bathroom and one woman's bathroom. There was always a huge line for the bathroom. The next restroom was about a 10-minute walk with two children, one a few months old and the other was barely 2. It was not easy for me getting to the other restrooms. My firstborn couldn't hold it and would pee on herself. My friend's mom would help me during the services, but she wasn't always assigned the services. So many times I was there alone with my 2 girls. No one else stepped in to offer some assistance. One sister had lots of assistance because her mom, sister, and husband would all help her with her one child. From my experience, World Mission Society Church of God is indifferent towards mothers. Walking to my car, I would put one on my back and carry the other one in my arms. Rarely did anyone offer to help me. Everyone seemed more concerned about their own salvation than being considerate that this mom of 2 young children might just need assistance to her car. Most times I was there struggling by myself, being fed the idea I'm a good mom if I bring my children to Zion and a bad mom if I stop. People are so quick to judge me for not coming instead of offering to help me. I was really concerned about my own children, but it was not the case with some of the other kids at the church. I remember one occasion on a regular Sabbath seeing one little boy in the kids' room so sick, he couldn't even sit up. He was lying on the floor and an adult member gave him a trash can so he would not puke on the carpet. He began to throw up in the trash can. They said it's a law of God to keep the Sabbath day holy and be in Zion all day. It doesn't matter if you're sick. Now, if the sick baby were to be one of my daughters, I would let her rest at home and if necessary, take her to the hospital. Religion should not come before the health of a child. As I try to attend services more often at Zion, I asked 2 group leaders that because I have been inactive in the church for a while, I haven't stored up treasures in heaven. So if the last day were to come tonight, the end I mean, and if God were to have mercy on my soul and allow me to enter heaven, because at this time I had missed so many services, I was still seen as a bad tree, and I had stopped cold turkey preaching door to door. I will be homeless in heaven along with my children. So I asked the 2 leaders if they would please let me and my children crash on their couches in heaven. They didn't say yes, they would. All they said is to start storing up spiritual blessings now. The way a member stores up spiritual blessings in heaven is basically by doing more deeds for God the Mother. Like if you see trash on the floor and you pick it up, if you bring supplies needed to the church, if you buy food for Zion or cooking, etc. I feel bad for the ones that get baptized before the last day and didn't get the chance to store up spiritual blessings in heaven. And just like that, I felt external guilt all of a sudden. At the end, my takeaway since becoming a mother and being a World Mission Society Church of God member was a lack of concern from some brothers and sisters. Not all, most. In comments such as, I hope your husband comes to Zion soon so he can help you with your children. Many members saw me struggling. Instead of coming together as a community and assisting each other out, we were supposed to fend for ourselves. As I tried to gain more heavenly treasures, I ramped up my recruiting game. One evening, the World Mission Society Church of God was having a Bible seminar. I brought 2 of my co-workers who had never heard of the World Mission Society Church of God before. One of the women I brought was going through a hard time in life, so I thought it would make her feel better to hear the Word of God. The Bible seminar included a video displaying very terrifying visuals of the end of the world and how it would be destroyed by fire. and also how the only seal of protection was the Passover. It's like they get a sick joy of making videos like those. I have seen dozens myself. The lady that was going through a rough time in life felt an urge to get baptized immediately. She was among 8 baptisms that night. From that seminar, graphic images showed, because, fear sells. They were all terrified and wanted the seal of protection. Naturally, based on my experience at the World Mission Society Church of God, I voiced my concern. I told the leaders who were making preparations for the baptism that she had never had a study before. She has no idea what this church is about. One leader tells me, "Mother says there's not much time left. We need to baptize and save as many souls as possible before the last day." Remember that homeless from earlier? How about them? She can return later and study more. People kept congratulating me for bearing a fruit. Some who never talked to me before were congratulating me. One of the leaders told me, "You have just gained a planet with her baptism." I asked her, "What do you mean?" She tells me, "Every fruit you bear, you earn a planet for when you return to heaven." And I thought, great, at least now I won't have to beg others to crash on their couches in heaven. I have my own planet now for my daughters and I. Who knew that getting involved with this church, I will have to deal with afterlife realtors? Despite all the celebrations and good feelings in the air for the new baptisms, there was a sister who had a straight face. A leader approached her and told her to smile so the newcomers can see how happy we are to receive salvation. Also, there was one day we were missing some ingredients for lunch, so some of the members were going to drive to the store. One lady of lower income tells them, "Here, take my EBT card," which is food stamps, "and buy the food with this. I'll invest my EBT money for spiritual blessings and store up treasures in heaven." Now that we're in the subject of fear tactics, I have to mention something that from back in my earlier days. Now, I know some of you might have heard that the World Mission Society Church of God was prophesying that the end of the world back in 2012. When I was in the church, I was just a member, which is the lowest ranking there. I did not knew that. It was something only the higher ranking members knew about. But the constant sermons about the end, it all implied for low ranking members like myself. It was slightly hinted and persistently said that something big was about to happen. They show us videos of natural disasters, nuclear bombs, wars, riots, and conflicts. We were instructed to store up non-perishable foods and lots of water. Now, talking about anxiety, imagine having to live a normal life knowing the world can end at any second. I spent more than thousands of dollars on emergency food. When 2012 came and went, the church said that the prophecy of the new Jerusalem temple was complete. I was confused. What did stocking foods in the videos of complete destruction have from earlier had to do with remodeling the new temple? Being new back then, I was even afraid to ask that question. I do not want to state the obvious, but the world did not end in 2012, and it was not the first claim the World Mission Society Church of God stated about the end of the world prophecies. I found out after I left the church and began researching the forbidden knowledge that this was one of their many failed predictions, and up to this date, they preach the world is going to end at any given day. And yet, somehow, this happens to correlate with the political climate in South Korea. Yet another huge red flag of cult-like behavior of the World Mission Society Church of God. One of the many reasons why the church discourages members to look up things online, because past behavior predicts future behavior. It was mid-2016. By this time, I only had one sister left in Las Vegas, Zion. She comes home one day and says, I am soon to be married. The whole family was like, what? We didn't know you had a boyfriend. The following week, she gets married with a guy my parents had never seen or knew, but he was part of the church. I might have seen him once or twice, but never thought much of him. Following the days after their marriage, they become in charge of the North Las Vegas Zion, just like that. My sister's birthday's coming up. A family friend of ours tells us he invites me, my husband, my sister, and her new husband to go eat. My husband has a heart-to-heart with me and said to me, you know I love you very much. I want to ask you for a favor. Can you please tell your sister to stop preaching to me? Every time I see her, she always brings up the church. I agreed to talk to my sister about it. Sure, my love, I'll tell her. He tells me, I have been very patient with her because she is your sister, but you know I don't appreciate religious talk. So then I go and call my sister. Can I ask you for a favor? Sure, what's up? When the 5 of us go out to lunch, can you please not preach to my husband anymore? He doesn't appreciate religious conversations. Listen, you can't tell me to stop preaching to him. You do not know if he's meant to be saved. Okay. I don't take what she said personally because I know her zeal for preaching is from the influence of the World Mission Society Church of God. So the day arrived, and the 5 of us go to the Cheesecake Factory. I accompanied my sister to the ladies' restroom while the men waited while the staff sets the table. I'm in the toilet, and I hear my sister say, hello, have you heard about God the Mother? The stranger lady she was speaking to says, no, but seriously, I'm not interested. My sister continues, we need to come to God the Mother in the last days to be saved. The stranger says, listen, it's good that you have your religion. I'm happy for you, but I'm not interested in your Bible talks. So the stranger lady, she just leaves. When I come out, I look at my sister. She is unfazed by the interaction. She continues as if nothing had happened. We sit down. My brother-in-law asks me, what's new? So I tell him, I started reading these books that I bought online. He interrupts me and tells me that those books are brainwashing me and I should only be reading Father's books. My husband and our friend start a small talk with each other. But my brother-in-law, he seemed like his main goal was to try to get my husband into a Bible study. My sister and brother-in-law start boasting about their church's volunteer work and the awards the church has won because of all the good deeds they do. My husband asked them nicely, hey guys, can we talk about something else? Let's talk about the weather, our meal. Let's talk about the restaurant. But yet their conversation began just to escalate even deeper into church's activities and why he should come to a Bible study in order for him to understand, saying you have to go under to understand. My husband was not having a good time. He even joked before arriving at the restaurant that we should have a safe word in case he could not take it any longer with those two. For my surprise in the confusion of everyone at the table, he began to almost scream, It started off as a joke, but he was clearly starting to show signs of distress. He was losing his cool. At one point, he seriously asked them to stop, and in a very serious manner told them religious conversations do not belong at the table, especially if not everyone at the table was on board with the subject. Despite the warning, they insisted to continue talking amongst themselves this time. At one point, even mentioning that cockroaches hide from the light, and perhaps it was the same case with my husband. At that point, my husband took the indirect comment personal because they are no longer talking about religion. Now it was flat out mockery. I will not lie, I have never seen my husband as angry as this before. and he got up and yells, "If you have something to say, you can say it to my face!" At this point, everyone at the restaurant was looking at us. I don't like to admit it, but we were making a scene. The verbal exchange continued. I would not mention here what was exchanged between those two in order to keep it clean. I had to hold back my husband because he was about to engage into what appeared to be a fist fight. Then I grabbed him and we stormed out the restaurant. So if you were at that cheesecake factory and your meal was ruined because some crazy man yelling at each other because of religion, I want to use this venue to apologize. My husband spent weeks without talking or addressing my brother-in-law directly. Eventually, the two made amends with each other and shook hands at my parents' house. After all, I insisted to him that we are family and all family members have disagreements. If it's not religion or politics or something else, it happens to all of us to let it go. In the end, it was the mature thing to do. A few weeks later, I ran into my brother-in-law who was an overseer of a house church. While I felt he was too fanatic with the church doctrine, I still believed World Mission Society Church of God was the only church with the truth. I told him, I feel my husband is very loving and kind. I don't understand why he doesn't understand the teachings of God the Mother. My brother-in-law said only God's true children will understand the truth because God says, "My sheep listen to my voice." And he proceeds to explain to me that actually when Judgment Day comes, everything will be revealed. And when a person goes to hell, you won't even feel sad for them. He continued and tells me I need to return to Zion as soon as possible. I tell him I have very young children. He says, that's okay. After all, my sister assisted in running the house church, and I had the hopes that this time was going to be easier for me and my kids. Smaller place, immediate family. I had hopes it was going to feel like family for once. Spoiler alert, I was wrong. On day one of returning to Zion, my children don't understand why we have to be in this house with these people all day long. So they were crying, saying, "Home, home." I told them we have to be here for the salvation of our souls. But my children were too young to understand the words that were coming out of my mouth. My brother-in-law started getting agitated that my youngest is needy of my attention and interrupting his Bible study. He instructs me to take her into the room and close the door and hit her. I disobeyed, and I tell him I will not do so. I do believe in spanking my children for discipline when it's necessary, but that was their first day back in Zion. My children did not need to be hit. They needed a hug and patience. They were too young to understand why we were doing this. I told my brother-in-law that I had told him I have children, and he was okay with it. We only came here because he said he was okay with my children, and now we are making people uncomfortable with our presence? My brother-in-law later apologized to me. Before coming to the services, my husband will always help me load up our children in our car because he knew it was difficult for me by myself. He personally did not like me going to the church, but allowed me to go as compromise because he loves me. When the services were over, almost never did another member help me with my two children to the car. Members usually just stood there talking amongst themselves. None will approach me and made me consider this mom of two very young children just might need help to her car. One day, both of my children were asleep. The Sabbath day was over. It was late. I wanted to go home, but I couldn't lift them both up by myself and then go and put on my shoes at the same time. My sister was attending to the new recruits. A brother walks by. I address him, even though we are instructed not to address the brothers in church. The women speak to women and the men speak to men. They even set women apart from men. I tell him, "Brother, can you please help me to my car?" He did so. That is one memory I have of someone helping me to my car with my children. I also remember one day my little girls were being fussy because they wanted a nap. But with the house full of people, they couldn't sleep. So one of the sisters who was living in the house offered me her bed. I thought that was really nice of her. She was showing me more love than my biological sister, who also had her room. But now that I think about it, maybe my sister had books that members with lesser faith are not allowed to see. So maybe that's why my sister didn't offer me her room. My daughters acted fussy during service. They are toddlers, that's what they do. So they instructed me to keep services in a room apart from the group with the door closed, in complete silence. I could not hear anything that was going on or what the sermon was about. The way I will find out the service was over after it ended was that a sister will walk in and be like, "Oh, it ended. You can take off your veil now." It was as if we were at some sort of time out. So I brought them a speaker and told my brother-in-law to use it during service so I can hear what he was saying. He said that the leader said no because we were in a house church. I insisted for him to use it, but there is no purpose for me to come to Zion if I'm in the room separate from everyone else because of my children. I cannot hear anything that he is saying in the sermon. He said that the leaders told him that the neighbors might complain. I told him I don't even need the speaker that loud. I was being isolated from the group. I had thought my sister and brother-in-law were going to be more supportive towards me. One day, a sister even caught me crying while I was there alone with my kids, isolated from the group, not knowing anything being said in a sermon going on in the living room. She was really sorry that I was going through this, but couldn't do anything about it because she was just a sister. So I voiced my concern to a leader in the main building inside Zion. She said, even though you are not able to hear anything that is being said, if you come to Zion, you still receive spiritual blessings because angels meet us in Zion during the Sabbath. Now that I think about it, going back to that day, I think it was a blessing in disguise. Maybe God didn't want me to hear the sermons because I would be enchanted and deceived by what was being said. So God probably kept me from listening. So I stopped attending my sister and brother-in-law's house church in North Las Vegas. I didn't see a point to be coming and just being closed in a room apart from everyone else and not being able to hear anything that's being said. I can just sit in my own room in silence and not have to waste gas and get the same information. Plus at home, my children have their own bathroom and don't have to wait for one of the sisters to come out of the bathroom because she's fixing her makeup. It was now spring of 2019. They moved to their current location as of today. I have stopped going for a while. I also found out that one of my biological sisters had left the church. I wish her well. Honestly, I was shocked because she was a leader and managed to go to Korea and meet God the Mother. Also around that time, my Zion friend reached out to me and again started texting me to convince me to go back to Zion again. So I did, because I still believed in their teachings in the promise of salvation. When I went back, I noticed everyone has the new editions of the World Mission Society Church of God Melchizedek Green Book, and I still have the old one. Did I miss something? Did Father Ansel Hong come back and correct the mistakes in his books? I asked around and they told me there's also an appendix added to the new song book. I asked for the appendix. I'm told to ask my leader. At this point, I don't even know who my leader is. I now see that there are more leniencies in the World Mission Society Church of God. For example, female members are being allowed to wear pants and flat shoes now. Yay for women's rights in 2019. Another thing I noticed when I returned, on a few occasions, they'll close Zion on a Monday and tell members to go spend time with their families. I recall from my earlier years, this wasn't always the case. At one point, World Mission Society Church of God discouraged spending time with family who were non-believers because Satan could use them as bad influence for the believer. Now they are retracting. I start noticing behaviors that I had not seen before. For example, in the morning services, the church is boasting about the members going to the United Nations and making speeches. It's like they are enjoying the fame. Technically, they are not preaching in the United Nations. Many times the videos shown are boasting about the Queen's Awards and the Presidential Volunteering Awards. What do materialistic awards have to do with saving souls and acquiring heavenly treasures? In one hand, the church is telling us that we need to be more humble, and in the other hand, boasting about their participation trophies? If we are part of the true religion, I wonder what is so important about these awards? We should be the ones giving these awards. It gives me the impression that if we won a contest, I saw this as lack of humbleness, arrogance. Saying the church has donated money and assisted people in natural disasters, while here I have seen members giving up money, most of their income, getting into debt. I have bear witness some members using their EBT cards for the church. They're doing all these sacrifices for what? All just for praise? For an award? If the world is anytime soon, how are these awards relevant to the cause? I know it brings awareness about the existence of the World Mission Society Church of God, but something did not feel right. It felt disingenuous to me, followed by a big emphasis on the message of General Pastor. In one of the sermon videos, General Pastor said, if you do not have a desire to preach, then you have not fully repented. Members must preach and recruit new members to be seen as good tree. So the word is that in the eyes of the church, if you are not preaching, you have not fully repented. So that causes the most loyal members to go overdrive. The most loyal members are kept so busy working to try to earn the free gift of salvation, almost putting their entire lives and careers on hold. The most loyal members of Zion are so sleep deprived, waking up at 5 in the morning to pray, getting ready for the day, going to work, after work going preaching, doing Bible studies, arriving home late at night every single day. They dedicate their lives, livelihoods, all for a Korean woman named Zhang Gil-ja, who claims to be God the Mother Jerusalem in the flesh, that has promised to give us the free gift of salvation. But first, we must labor for it. Whatever happened to unconditional love from Mother? World Mission Society Church of God keeps their members extremely occupied with church activities, and that is sleep deprivation. This is another cult technique to keep their cult members under a state of trance and full submission. Naturally, I have brought up concerns to the leaders of the World Mission Society Church of God. But when I look into their eyes of the group leaders inside Zion and speak to them, they look like they're hearing me, but not really listening to my words. Many times as an individual member, I was told not to complain like the Israelites who came out of Egypt and died in the desert. I have noticed that the World Mission Society Church of God only changes when things are brought to the public and when they get negative attention from the news. Like for example, when Zion had a reputation for breaking up families, that is when my biological sisters were encouraged to talk to me again. Before, my sisters were very cautious on what they said to me because I was considered as someone with lesser faith. They only said to me, God bless you, or if I complimented them on something, their favorite response was, thanks to Father and Mother. That was it. Many members are giving up job opportunities that require them to work Saturdays in order to be able to keep the Sabbath day holy in Zion. Some are in debt. Every day they are hoping for the end to come so they can return to heaven. For example, my sister last year, who along with her husband are in charge of a house church in another state now, gave me a birthday card. Inside the birthday card was $3. Those $3 were all she owned and wanted me to have them. My heart broke for her because she is living below her means to pay for her religion. I see American group leaders, missionaries, and deacons as regular members with the title to make them feel special, to encourage them to do more deeds. The doors are open in World Mission Society Church of God. No one is physically being held against their will. But it doesn't occur to the members to walk out because of how much fear and guilt they have programmed into the members about leaving. Members are being kept in prison with instilled fear and guilt if they were to leave, still paying tithes and offerings and money on gas to get to church and preaching sites, and working many hours to preach to the whole world in order to earn their free gift of salvation. World Mission Society Church of God always has coffee in large containers, and still I see leaders dozing off during services from the lack of sleep they get, with a smile on their face so they don't get rebuked for not smiling. After all these years I spent enduring their indifferences towards me, but now I begin to question their overall practices. I mean, we can only live through so much before we start questioning. I used to feel bad for me and guilty for questioning the World Mission Society Church of God practices of telling members, do as I say, not as I do. Why was I flooded with these feelings of not belonging, despite trying so hard all these years and being told I'm still not worthy of salvation? Honestly, I grew tired of being told I need to try harder, do more, get more involved. I felt as an outsider in my own religion, so I began to research on my own. I pulled my own personal notes. I began to reread the books I bought from the church. In other words, I began connecting the dots on my own. All the red flags from my own experiences all these years, recollect all those questions I had, and they simply dismissed them with yet another Bible study. So I did the natural thing to do. I began looking for people going through similar experiences with the World Mission Society Church of God on the internet. Eventually, I began looking things on YouTube, probably in the same way you found my video. At first, I saw many testimonials speaking badly about the church. And remember what the church told us about those people? Former members who speak out are cursed. So I dismissed them right away. Then I found the biggest revelation to me yet, the testimonial of my very own biological sister, Isabella. She had been dealing with her own silent struggles too. And for me, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. All my doubts and questions were confirmed. I called her right away and we talked for hours. After a lengthy conversation, reliving all the things we endured being members of the World Mission Society Church of God, and then I realized that lifestyle was no longer for me. So I left the World Mission Society Church of God for good. Then I started thinking, maybe it's all part of God's plan all along. Think about it. If God didn't want us to eat from the fruit of knowledge of the tree of good and evil, why make it in the form of a fruit? And why place it in the middle of the Garden of Eden? Because the fruit is meant to be eaten and the seeds to be spread, so new trees can grow again. It's part of a never-ending cycle of spreading knowledge, a test of sort. If God would really want us not to eat it, why not make it lava or place it out of reach? The salvation offered in World Mission Society Church of God doesn't seem like a free gift. It seems more like a labor. One must labor to earn salvation. World Mission Society Church of God gives out a whole list of things to do to earn salvation. Keep all the services, prayer times, preaching, pay tithes and offerings, which is way more than 10% by the time you add everything up donated to the church. As a former member, I remember feeling anxiety that I couldn't perform everything required, so exhausting. The God the Mother of World Mission Society Church of God gives her love under a lot of conditions one can't really measure up to. The God in the Bible is more of an unconditional loving God. Of course, that is no license to keep sinning, but because God loves one so much, one wants to please Him by listening to God. Instead of it feeling like an obligation to obey everything the World Mission Society Church of God says, I have kept silent for 9 years because I didn't want to lose the salvation of my soul for speaking up. But maybe God put me in this cult to speak up. We will all be judged one day. I don't want God to ask me on Judgment Day, why didn't you speak up about how these people are being exploited and how little sleep they are permitted for the gain of Zong Gil Ja and Ju Shou Kim? And for me to say, they had the truth of the Passover. And then for God to tell me, Dory, they're not the only ones who claim to have the Passover the same way. The man who was crucified next to Jesus on the cross has no record of keeping the Passover. He had faith in Jesus and lived according to God's will. Zhang Gilja, God the Mother Jerusalem, and Ju Shou Kim, General Pastor, and those closest to them are charging people through tithes and offerings. And don't forget gas money to get to church, making them preach constantly to work to earn their free gift of salvation. People, I urge you to read the Bible for yourselves. You realize that many things the World Mission Society Church of God are doing is against God. Also, I recommend you read psychology books on cults. You'll notice that the World Mission Society Church of God is doing almost all the techniques. Us versus them, information control, behavioral control, love bombing, sleep deprivation, charismatic leader, and godlike figures, and etc. I will ask you to remember your own experiences during your time at the World Mission Society Church of God. How many times do you feel that you were doing something bad, but you had no choice but to follow orders? How many times do you feel alone or that you were not good enough despite all your sacrifices? Ask yourself, how many times do you not feel happy while at the church and make your family and loved ones outside the church worry about you? Do you think God gave man free will just so He could take it away through deception and mind control? Do you think in a God that wants His children to be robots? Many of you still stay after all the injustices you see, thinking, what if Zhang Gilja is God? I suggest to rather look at it this way. What if she isn't the right God? Then you will be idolizing a charismatic human being. I also urge you to do your own research on the church. Do you know why God the Mother prohibits her children from searching the church on the internet? It's because of all the things she is hiding from you. Former members who speak out are only trying to help those still mentally entrapped in this cult. Ex-members expose the inner workings of the cult to the outside public, which is terrible for recruiting. They need newcomers to sustain the whole pyramid scheme. Now, thank you for watching, and remember, you are not alone. Think, ask, look back. All the signs have always been there. Do you think I still get to keep my planet after making this video?